I know I'm an addict because when I wake up in the morning, this always just tastes so good. Hey everyone, my name is Harrison, and we're going over my watch collection today. I felt very GQ. Going over watch collection today, I typically do this once a year. And when I say typically, I mean this is the second time I've done it. So I do this about once a year. So this box has all of them in there. We'll go through them one at a time. There's no particular order. I just did bottom row, then top row. Just real quick, I love doing these watch collections just because I liked watching them when I was watching YouTube, before I started making these videos. And they're always like an interesting thing to see why someone would pick something. It gives you ideas on what to do on your collection. And primarily in my case, I like to share my collection because I'm a normal person. I don't have a Patek. I don't have an Audemars Piguet Royal Oak. I don't have these things that, if you watch these celebrity talking watches, you think, okay, great. You've got, 16 Daytonas, like John Mayer. Great collection. I can't afford that collection. I'm more of a normal person. I work in manufacturing. I like watches, but I don't earn enough money to where I can buy whatever I want. So I like to just make that clear up front. For those of you out there that are just getting into the hobby, my collection is very attainable over several years. I like to keep my collection attainable because that way it's a little bit more realistic. I get that they're very expensive and there are ludicrous ways to spend your money, but that's how I've spent my money. So I just want to say that up front as a preface before we get into this. The first watch here, as we go from left to right, is the Seiko Turtle. Now the Seiko Turtle here, this is my beater. So everyone talks about how you have to have a beater, and I really never understood what that meant. Does that mean that you're beating your watches? You're bashing them up for no reason? No, I think it's just a watch that you like, but you can hit and it doesn't bother you as much. Now this is an expensive beater. Which is crazy. When I bought my first automatic watch 6 years ago, it was the same price as this is. And I thought $300 was a crazy amount of money to spend on a watch. It is a crazy amount of money to spend on a watch. But this is my beater. It's chunky. I love it. It's still relatively slim. It's got a ceramic bezel insert, sapphire crystal. It just serves a purpose. When I've done on the back end of me installing before our company went straight into manufacturing only, I wore this a majority of the time out on builds. When I built several different things around my house and around my parents' house, I wear this. When I work in the workshop, I typically wear this. When I am doing any fabrication or grinding or whatnot in my house, I wear this. So the Turtle has definitely been a kind of a companion on the labor end. So I think it takes, because of that, and it's not that I don't dislike labor, but because I associate labor with the watch, I don't typically wear it for fun. I typically only wear it when I need it for a purpose. And while I'm in the purpose or doing whatever I'm doing, I enjoy the fact that I'm wearing it. I enjoy looking at it. And that's kind of what the Turtle is for me. Definitely a beastie watch. I am considering taking this diving this next year, but we'll have to see how the schedule works for this next year. Now the next one is what someone would typically normally consider a beater, and that's a G-Shock. Now the difference is that this is actually a NASA G-Shock. So it's got all the NASA branding on there. It's got, the white case. This is a limited release, I think, recently. I don't know what was limited about it, if there was a limited number. I just remember I had to sign up for a wait list and then, or a list for maybe getting it. And then they sent it to me, or they sent an email and said, hey, you won, and then charged my card and sent it to me. So it was a really interesting way of selling a watch. I thought I was gonna end up doing the NASA tests on my MoonSwatch, which I'll get into a little bit later. And so I thought, hey, maybe I should do it on this. I thought it was cool. I like the white case. It's definitely something that's a little bit different. It's chunky and beefy, and it's a watch I don't typically wear anymore. I used to have a black version of this, which I actually wore the entire time I traveled around the world because G-Shocks are great. I haven't worn this as much. I wear it occasionally, but it's so big and I'm not used to that anymore that I don't as much as I thought I was going to. Next watch is another G-Shock. So this is the classic. I think it's the DW5200 if I remember correctly. Someone correct me if I'm wrong if that's not the correct serial or model number. So great watch. Again, you got a G-Shock. There's not much more I can say. I've talked about it in my other watch collections. I don't actually have a review on this watch yet. I do have a review on the Turtle, but I don't actually have a watch review on this specific watch. But there's so many people that talk about G-Shock or have reviewed G-Shock that I didn't think it was necessary. So either way, great watch. You can't really go wrong. I think it was like $100 and it uses a radio wave to check its time back with universal time to fix itself every morning. I use this to set all of my other watches. The next watch is basically just a sentimental piece. So this is a Luminox Navy SEAL 3001, if I remember correctly. This was their original Navy SEAL. So Luminox is a Swiss company. They primarily do military-inspired or military-focused watches. Now, I don't know necessarily how many guys in the military actually wear a Luminox. I think a certain number of them. I do think G-Shock is the primary watch for most military men, but I do think Luminox is worn. This is a quartz movement, and this is the first watch, or the model. It's the same model of the first watch that I was given by my father. I broke that one. You can see I've talked about it in a couple of the videos and my last watch collection video. It got run over by a car, so I replaced it. It feels like high school to me, and so I wanted to have that in my collection. And I thought I was so cool when I had this on. So I thought it was neat to bring it back and to keep it in the collection. The next one is kind of an homage, kind of on its own. I would consider it an homage, but I don't really know. People consider typically something that's a copy, direct to direct with a new brand and homage. I don't as much. This is what I would consider an homage, which is taking inspiration, but not entirely stealing the entire design. And this is the Maurice Lacroix. I know for sure I butchered the pronunciation there, but the Maurice Lacroix, yeah, something like that. This watch is basically looks like an AP Royal Oak, but for a lot less money. I think I bought this for $1,000 from Japan. I liked the idea of it being all blacked out because I knew it was going to be, I think this is 40 or 41 millimeters. I'm going to come out with a review of this soon. This just came in a couple weeks ago, and it's got this cool little, like, I don't really know how to describe it. It's probably like some sort of hybrid strap where it's almost like a rubber, mainly a plastic strap. So it's good water resistance, but it's very smooth at the same time. It's very thin. The crown has some issues, but again, I'll go through that in the review that's coming out probably in a couple weeks here. It reminds me a lot of like early 2000s when everyone was wearing like Diesel. Does anyone remember the Diesel brand? I think I remember that correctly. Diesel, Fossil were huge in black, like black watches, black pants. I felt like this is kind of gives me that feeling. I haven't seen this in steel yet, but a lot of people love this watch. And so I thought I'd get it in and do a review. As I said, that's coming out soon. So that's the bottom row. We'll move on to the top row, but I also have two other watches that are floating around that kind of are still considered part of the collection, but not really. One is the MoonSwatch. So this watch is the MoonSwatch. This is a mission to Jupiter. The reason why it's not part of my collection is because it's probably going to be dead here in the next 2 to 10 to 15 days, depending on how long it survives. I'm doing the NASA tests that they did on the original Speedmaster on the MoonSwatch. I already did the first test. It's already on the channel. If you're interested in that, I've got the card up above. Spoiler alert, the first test, it survived, which is 200 degrees in a vacuum, partial vacuum chamber, and 48 hours at 60 degrees Celsius or 140 degrees Fahrenheit. And then the second test was 4 hours in a freezer at 0 degrees Fahrenheit or negative 18 degrees Celsius. So it survived all that, which I've been very impressed by, to be honest with you. And so I'm now into the next test 3, which takes like, I think 12 hours total, 45-minute cycles. So it's gonna take me a long time. And then the next test is like 10 days. So it's gonna take a while, so bear with me. But that's why the MoonSwatch isn't part of the collection, because it should be dead soon. And then the Tudor Chrono. I already did a review on this, cards up above. I'll keep doing cards for every watch if there's a review for it. I understand why a lot of people like it, not for me. I can only have a limited number of watches in my collection. I don't have unlimited funds, and so the watch is leaving. I have been trying to sell it for a while. I think I overpaid for it, so I'm not getting quite as much out as I originally put in on the watch. I thought I was getting a better deal when I first bought it, but so be it. So I'm looking to sell that right now. Let's see what my AD offers me and see if it's somewhat comparable to what I would be getting post eBay fees. The other watch that's in the middle part of this collection that isn't part of my actual collection is my Apple Watch Ultra. So everyone knows about Apple Watches in general. I wear this basically to work out when I run, when I lift. So like I'm gonna wear it tonight when I work out. Very helpful, you know? People hate smartwatches. I try as much as possible, and it's difficult sometimes to not be a snob about some things, because smartwatches is one of those things that watch enthusiasts will turn their nose up at. I try to enjoy all watches equally, and this is a good example of that. As best I can, I try to enjoy it. It is a computer or a phone on your wrist. but sometimes that's incredibly helpful for heart rate sensing, for workouts. This is great. For runs, the tracking on this thing for a run is fantastic. I could get on a treadmill and it'll know my pace as I change my pace. If you've ever run sprints on a treadmill, most watches, like my old Garmin, cannot read your pacing correctly. It thinks you're going at a certain speed, it thinks you go slightly faster even though you're going twice as fast. This has done a great job of tracking me on sprints, both outside and inside, and I just like it for that reason. It's a great watch, great battery life, and that's why I have the Ultra, not because I need an Ultra, but because I wanted the battery life, or honestly, I also thought it was cool. So, the titanium case I thought was neat, so I got it. And I reviewed this last year, cards up above. But either way, this is part of the watch collection. It doesn't sit in the watch box because it typically has to get charged, but it is part of the watch collection. So I want to make sure that I note that. For all of you out there that have a smartwatch, don't be ashamed. It is normal to have a smartwatch. If you don't like smartwatches, that's fine, but it is technically still part of my watch collection. So just want to make sure that I note that. So as we start here on the top row, first one here, so this is a Baltic watch. This is their Hermetique Tourer. I know I'm not saying that correctly, but again, French company. So the watch is basically like an Explorer. Again, I would consider this an homage, but this is like an Explorer homage. It's got this nice flat link polished bracelet that I would expect from the 60s. It's got a really cool dial layout. I've always really liked that. When I first saw the press images, they sent this to me, and that was cool for me. I've been doing this thing for almost 2 years now on YouTube, which is weird because it doesn't feel like it's been that long. But I remember when I originally started it, there were a couple brands I thought might be achievable to have them send me a watch that I could keep. And Baltic was one of those that I would have been excited about. And I reached out to them and said, hey, when you have a release coming up, let me know. They did. I uploaded this. It doesn't get as much wrist time as I originally hoped it would, but that's not a fault of the watch. That's more of a fault of me. I tend to favor specific watches every single day rather than changing it up that much. So either way, love the watch. Definitely interesting. Like that it's a blue dial, something different in my collection. I do typically wear it on a strap rather than the bracelet, but I put it on the bracelet a couple days ago. Next watch here that's not part of what I would consider my core 3 would be this Bremont. So this is another watch that I bought to review. It is a chunky beast. I actually originally found out about this because I was watching a podcast with Andrew Huberman in it, and it was the watch he was wearing. I watch spotted and I was curious about what he was wearing, and it turned out to be this Bremont. And I hadn't really reviewed or seen a Bremont in person, and so I wanted to get it in, wanted to talk about it. It's got this beefy leather strap on it. It's got a very solid case. It's got this DLC mid case. It's got 4 crowns because it's got a chronograph function on it. It's got a GMT function on it, a date function on it, and it's got a rotatable bezel that you can set on the outside. So it's got all these different features compacted together. So obviously it's going to be chunky. Whole thing's brushed. It definitely gives a very purpose feeling style to it, I suppose. So everything on here serves a purpose, and there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. There's no polishing. There's no, shininess other than, I guess, kind of the crowns. But other than that, this is made to just wear, use, be done with it. And I like it. It's a little bit bigger than what I normally would wear. It may not stay just because, again, it's not part of the core 3. And when it's not part of the core 3, I don't always keep it. I typically let them go if they're higher value and they're not good enough to take the wrist time away from one of my top 3. So for that reason, I think I'm probably going to let it go, but I am holding on to it for a little while. But that's the Bremont. If you're interested in that review, as always, cards up above. The next watch is the latest addition to my collection this year that I would consider basically permanent, and that would be the Breitling Navitimer. Now, I've wanted a Navitimer since I originally got into watches. I remember when I went to the first jewelry store, I was hanging out there. I wanted to see what I would be interested in, very nervous, the feeling if you've gone to a jewelry store because you're interested in watches for the first time, you feel like a nerd that is in a place that you can't afford. Unless you're someone that already could afford all that stuff. And it's just, it's strange because, you lead up to this moment of talking to people about buying a watch, and then you're there and you don't really know what to talk about other than, oh, that's a cool watch. Can I try that on? So either way, when I was there, I remember the first watch that I saw that I just thought that's way better in person than it is in press images. That's a watch I would definitely wear. and that was a Navitimer. Now at the time they were selling the full bracelet version for retail for like $9,000, and Breitling's retail prices are very, very expensive. I bought this from Japan, used. This is a early 2000s model, if I remember correctly, I think 2006. And I got this for about 35, I think. So, I mean, in my opinion, I think that's a great deal. It's like the same pricing as a Speedmaster, but so much more depth and interest, I think, to the dial. At least for me, it does. So, great watch. Absolutely love it. I've been wearing this constantly since I got it in. It's definitely taken over a lot of wrist time. Really love it. Use the chronograph all the time. Don't use the slide rule bezel. Still don't remember now how to calculate a tip or anything with it. It's just there. But it looks cool. It's very busy, very intricate, and for that reason, I really like it. So if you're someone that's trying different things or you're really into Rolex, I had someone reach out the other day. They were really interested in Rolex. They only wear Rolex. I said, try out Breitling. Like it's also tool oriented, and maybe you find something you really like. But I'm trying to venture out of the top brands as much as I can. Although it's not popular on YouTube to talk about like Bremont. That video did horrible. You know, it's interesting, I think, for people to have different options or exposure to different options. And Breitling is kind of one of those options. Although everyone knows what the Navitimer is, they're not Omega, Rolex, Cartier, Tudor, which are the top four, obviously. So let's move on to the next watch, and that is the Rolex Explorer. Now I have beat everyone over the head, the story of this watch. I don't need to do it again. If you're interested, cards up above. I'll do first the card of when I first got it, and then also I've got more cards that'll probably pop up of each of the reviews. You can open tabs and whatnot. So the Explorer, what's there really to say about a 36mm Explorer? It's a watch that I don't regret buying, which as your first watch and you try and never sell it, that I think is a big statement. It's very easy for us in watches to buy something and then change our mind and then sell it. But when you buy your first watch, or when I say your first watch, your first luxury watch, your first watch that when you buy it, you feel like you've spent more money than you really should have, a watch that gives you a certain feeling. That's what I mean by first watch. My first would be the Luminox or a G-Shock when I was really, really young, or a Fossil. I've got more videos on that. But when I started getting into mechanical watches, I was lusting after the 36mm Explorer. I remember talking to my dad, sitting in the car and saying, if I only had that, I would wear that to my wedding. I would wear it every day. I wouldn't need anything else. I lied, clearly, because I have other things, but it is a watch that I don't regret at all being the watch that I can't sell because of the sentiment. And I think that says enough. Because I've considered selling almost everything here. I've had moments where I considered selling this because I should have gotten a Datejust, because everything I have is very sport oriented. If I had a dressy piece that I couldn't sell, maybe I would have a little bit better balance. But by and large, I love the watch. Now I got it serviced recently, again, video up above. They did a great job. They made it feel new to me because I started to lose some of the magic. It was getting so scratched up to the point where it didn't dress up that well. At least in my opinion, or it didn't feel as nice to wear. And I think something about the delicacy of something that's recently finished gives you a certain feeling of niceness. Because you have to treat it well, it's nice as a result. Don't know if that's necessarily true, but that's kind of how I felt. Either way, so I kept the watch, love the watch, wear it all the time. The Navitimer, and obviously my number one watch, I wear constantly. I typically swap between those three. If you look at the whole calendar, I would say about 30% of my time is in each of those. And then the last 10% is worn for like experience for reviews and to see how much I like a watch to get into a different style. Everyone talks about the 36mm Explorer. If you have one, shout out. If you have a 39 or 40mm, because there's different options now, also shout out. I think the Explorer people, we need to stick together, you know? So in the same Explorer vein, number one watch, if you've watched my channel, you know what I have here is the Explorer 2. Now, I got on my last video a lot of crap about having two Explorers, and on my 3-watch collection, like my Core 3-watch collection video, I got a lot of crap for having two Explorers. But so what? They're different. I mean, it's like having a GMT watch and an Explorer. Just because it says Explorer on it, the look and feel is very, very, very different on this watch than it is on that watch. It's a white dial, it's got an external bezel, it's got a GMT hand, it's got black hands. That is the opposite in each of those categories with white or black. So very different feel, very different look, especially since I put it, this is another Artem strap. I don't know if I pointed out earlier that the Navitimer was on an Artem strap. This is another Artem strap they sent me. This is their sand beige. They've been everywhere, man. They've sent out a lot of watch straps to a lot of different reviewers, but they make a great product from what I've experienced over the last, I guess, 7 months of wearing these pretty rigorously in the warehouse. They wear well, they feel good, they repel water well, and they still look nice. And I think that's really all I was looking for. So great watch, love the Explorer 2. Talked about this before. I've got plenty of videos talking about the watch, reviewing the watch, talking about when I bought it, my honeymoon with it, all sorts of different stuff. But this is another watch that I really wanted for a long period of time. I had considered buying this instead of the original Explorer 36 millimeters. I'm glad I didn't. I love this thing. I love that that is what I wore to the wedding. I love that this is different. So I have both. Both of them are not leaving, so you'll see them in every watch collection to move forward. But the Explorer 2, fantastic watch. It's actually what I'm going to be wearing to work today, so I'm going to go ahead and put that on for now. Now, in terms of future plans, this is already a long video. I'll probably do that in a different video, but essentially in the channel, I'm gonna be looking at different things. I'm also gonna try and get more information out there that cuts through all the marketing. Like, for example, the Bremont says it's got a Bremont movement in it. It doesn't. It has a Valjoux 7754 or an ETA 7754, because all of the things that they call out as if they sound like they're specific to that movement actually come with the chronometer grade version of that movement. So some of that stuff, as well as testing, I plan on different tests other than just the NASA test for the MoonSwatch. I've got different testing coming up as well. COSC testing, METAS testing. We'll see how all those go. But either way, that's basically me. That's the channel. That's my watch collection. If you guys have any comments or questions or suggestions, leave them down below. And do me a favor, please, and subscribe. That is the best thing you can do for this channel, is just subscribe. It doesn't cost you any money, and it makes the channel more viable for us to be able to get more things in to talk about without beating around the bush, to cut through the marketing. I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.